In this video, me and my friend Matthew built new vehicles that combined with the Ninjago combo mech set for the other ninja that weren't included. This is Zane's Ultra Combiner Mech, a really cool Ninjago set released in 2025. It's a giant mech that splits into 4 parts, a large version of the ninja Zane, Ryu the dragon who sits on the back, then the torso transforms to become a jet for Sora, and the legs become a car for Pixel. This is easily one of my favorite sets this year. I love how it looks in both forms. So, I was curious, could I build new parts for the Combiner Mech that fit the other ninja? Since the mech comes apart, I could build swappable modules that could mix and match with parts from the official set. And since there's so many characters for me to choose from, I thought it would be more fun if I didn't work on this project alone. I met up with my friend Matthew, and we each took 2 ninja to design combo vehicle mech parts for. He chose Kai and Aaron, and I chose Lloyd and Cole. Now that does still leave out Neo, Wildfire, Jay, and Frack, but if you guys like this video, maybe we'll go back and make parts for them later. To actually do this though, and have the parts that we need, we decided to pick out some other LEGO sets to help with the challenge. I chose Lloyd's car and Cole's mech to make sure that I had Ninjago parts in each of their colors, 2 creator sets that also matched so that I'd have good building bricks, the Majestic Tiger and the Medieval Dragon, and then finally a Speed Champions car, which had good Cole colors and also just some useful mechanical looking parts. Then Matthew chose Aaron's jet and Kai's mech for ninja parts, 3 copies of the Monkey Kid mech for some red and some orange, and finally to round it out, 2 Lion King sets for detailing pieces for Aaron. Now, unlike our previous building challenge videos, this wasn't as much of a competition, rather we were more working together, so you may see some parts from Matthew's sets in my build or some parts of my sets in Matthew's build, as well as just some random parts we pulled from our personal collections. We were just trying to make the best models possible, the sets were just there to help us out. However, while there wasn't as much of a parts limitation, we had a different limitation, time. I was only visiting for a few days and we filmed another challenge while I was there. That video's already up on the channel, and because we were doing more than just building LEGO, we definitely did not work on these as long as I typically would. So the race against the clock was definitely a part of the challenge, but still, I think we put together some pretty neat stuff, so let's take a look at them. So we'll start off with my custom version of the combo mech. Before I get into what I actually built, a few different things to note. Number 1, neither me nor Matthew changed out Zane or Ryu. The biggest reason behind that is just because they are characters, the other 2 parts are vehicles, so it made more sense to leave them as is and replace the vehicle parts. At one point I was considering rebuilding the Forest Dragon to be like a Lloyd Dragon on the back, and then replacing Zane with some sort of tiny mech for another character, and I still might do that at some point, but because of that time limitation that I mentioned, we focused on 2 vehicles each, the legs and the arms. The other thing that I want to point out is obviously the color scheme here is Cole's color scheme of the legs and Lloyd's color scheme of the torso. That is very different from what the official set does. Despite the different vehicles being for different characters, in the official set, every vehicle sort of shares the same color scheme. It's dark blue, white, and red. I actually really like that approach to the official set. In fact, I probably prefer it to the approach I did, but if I didn't use the ninja's official colors and just stuck with that same color scheme, I think the build would be visually a lot more boring and wouldn't feel as different. So changing the colors up felt a little more fresh, even if it wasn't as consistent. Another big thing is both me and Matthew tried to change up what the vehicles were from the original version. Like, I didn't just want to replace the Sora jet with another jet for a different character. I wanted it to be a different vehicle that still filled that whole, arm structure. And same thing with the legs, right? I didn't want to make just, a car for another character. So what I ended up doing is I did still make a car, but it wasn't on the legs down here, it was actually on the arms. And then the legs turned into, a treaded tank instead. In the full mech form, I'm pretty happy with how this looks. I feel like it still captures the bulk from the original set. This double-bladed weapon in this arm I think is very fun and cool. And one of my favorite details is how I made each of the legs a different color. One's black and one's orange, while still obviously both being for Cole. But for now, let me remove Zane and Ryu and transform this into the individual vehicles so you can see how they look on their own. Of course, Zane still comes off the front the same exact way, and Ryu detaches from the back. Then the torso still comes off in the same way. You remove this hand and you actually put it to the back, not the front, so that's something that's different from the original. Which side the hand's attached to is the opposite. So of course the other hand can also detach, and it reattaches at the base of the torso. Then the legs function very similar to the ones in the original set. First you gotta move these 2 little pieces out, that's something new. Then you close them up and connect them together, and then you flip it to place it on the treads, but then with the feet, instead of putting them back like in the original build, you turn them around like this, to sort of cover up the back of the tank. I guess we'll start by taking a look at Cole's tank, because of the 2, it's definitely the one I'm happier with. As I mentioned before, when it was fully put together, a big part of this for me was the asymmetry in the legs. One side is black, the other side's orange. Part of that was just sort of a parts limitation thing. I didn't feel like I had enough black or orange to do both legs. And originally I was sort of alternating it, using both colors on both legs, but I didn't love how that looked. And then I was just sort of struck by an idea. What if I did one side entirely orange and the other side entirely black? And you can see the black side's a little more rugged, there's a lot more exposed studs, while the orange side has a lot more of these smoother curves. Again, this is very much a parts available thing, but I think it worked out. The shapes on this side especially don't feel the most intentional, and spoilers, that's because they weren't, but I think it captured a nice enough overall vibe that it worked. My favorite parts, though, are definitely the transparent orange pieces at the front. Those, of course, come from the Cole's Elemental Power Mech, and they fit perfectly at the tops of the legs right here. I also use the larger SCCBS armor pieces to make up the cockpits, and when it's in truck mode to actually access them you have to move the feet back. But if we look inside, there is room to fit a minifigure, so I can place Cole in there even with his armor just fine. And then of course close it back up around him, and then close the feet back down over top. There is a secondary seat on the other leg too, so if I want I can have a second minifigure ride around in here, but the entire thing's themed around Cole, so I'm not sure exactly who I'd put in there, maybe Frack. Actually, I guess that kind of works. Let me grab Frack. There we go, he doesn't fit perfectly, but he fits. And he's still tucked away pretty nicely. On Cole's side of the car though, I do have these two little brick-built cannons, and they're nothing too crazy, but I wanted some sort of weapon that made it different from the original vehicle. And then of course, the big thing here is also the treads, which wow, this has given me a new appreciation for anybody who builds anything with treads. These were so much more difficult to work with than I thought, just getting the ratios right, making sure they didn't break, making sure they didn't fall off. Part of that's because I was using the skeleton from the original set, and obviously that was not meant for treads, that was meant for wheels. But man, probably 75% of me building this was just trying to connect these treads, trying to fit them in a way that works. And even in the final version, I'm still not 100% happy with them, but it rolls and it's connected, and that's all that matters to me. It's functional and it's stable enough, and that's all I was trying to do. As a side effect of this though, you could see some remnants of earlier designs on the insides, as well as some remnants of the original model. We have just some stray Technic pieces in here. And it would have been cool to maybe go in and fix some of this up, but I finally got this working, and I'm like, no, I'm not disassembling the Technic to go hide away all these pins. It's fine, these show. It's underneath, it's not that big of a deal. And then the front of the vehicle, which is the wasted mech form, is slightly different. It's mostly just a recolor of the original set, but I changed up the shaping a little bit just to make it a little more rugged. Like, there's some studs here that weren't here before. It's mostly the same though. So yeah, overall pretty happy with this one. It's far from perfect, but for the purposes of this challenge, I'm happy with how it turned out. I think the biggest thing with this one is it looks pretty good in both forms, which obviously is a challenge when making any sort of transforming vehicle, because some of the other builds both me and Matthew did look really good in one form and not as good in the other. I think this definitely does look better in mech form, but in tank form it's alright. I'm happy enough with it. And then here's Lloyd's car, which I have very mixed feelings on how it turned out. The front I think is pretty good. I wish I was able to give Lloyd a little more of a cockpit because it's more just a windshield, but I feel like the hand and arm elements do tuck away pretty nicely. My favorite part is the slope piece that covers up this Nexonite shield, because the Nexonite shield is a part of the torso while this is a part of the hand, but that curve works in both mech and vehicle form. I think the figures fold up here to be a decent bumper, and I do really like the wheel pieces in general. They're the ones from the official Lloyd car set, but I just love the lime green. It's very cool looking. And the back of the car, the other hand, I think also turned out pretty cool in isolation. I'm happy with this layered effect of the Nexonite shield. I'm especially happy with how well it slots in. Like with the tiles on the side of the build, there's no gap at all, so it still feels like one solid structure. This doesn't feel like a separate part. And then the detail that sort of inspired this entire thing is the giant hook pieces on the back. The idea was for this to sort of look like a spoiler on the back of the car, but then serve as a weapon when it's in mech form. And again, I think that worked out okay, because things I don't like about the back here. Number one, the angle of the car. It's raised up slightly higher at the front than at the back, because these wheels are a little bit bigger from the original set. Now you might just be saying, oh, move the bigger wheels to the back. Well, that's what I originally had, but I realized very late in that the bigger wheels rub against like the hook pieces at the back, so it's not able to roll along against the floor. So I had to put the smaller wheels back here. So ideally, maybe I move the hand out one more, move these out one more, but it would have involved too much rebuilding that I just did not have time for. So I left it as is. The other thing is I feel like the spoiler should be higher. It feels very, very low. It feels more like a tail to the car than a spoiler, but all that's fine. My biggest thing here is the shoulders, because I could not figure out what to do with the shoulders. I think this is the best like orientation for them. I love the green energy effects coming off of them. I think that's cool, and they look really good in mech form, but in car form they're awkward because they're so big and they're just in the middle of everything, and these lower arm sections I barely got the chance to replace. It's mostly the same from the original set, so that's a color scheme thing I wish I changed up too. But yeah, I think orienting them like this sort of has them look like thrusters to sort of push the car forward, but that's far from perfect. I wish I could have found a way to bulk them down while still keeping their appearance in mech form, but obviously you have to consider both here. The other way I've played around with having it is like this, with the black parts going directly up, and I do think it makes the center of the car look nicer because all of this flows really well together, but the idea would be that these are like exhausts, and these don't really read to me as exhausts, especially with the ball joints in the middle and the positioning. It really just feels like arms. Like, this makes this still feel like the torso of a mech, while at least the other way it feels more car-like. But yeah, something like this is probably the preferred position to keep it feeling somewhat car-like. So yeah, I don't know. I definitely had an idea here, but I feel like it could have used a little more time in the kitchen. It looks good in mech form though, I will say. I'm very happy with that. So now let me put it back together. Here it is with just the custom parts, so no Zane and Ryu attached yet. A couple more things to note in mech form. I have the turrets on the tank part sort of wrap around the leg. It's not perfect, but I think it looks fine. And then one other sacrifice I had to make is there was no longer any swivel on this arm. That was just necessary to allow it to connect to the torso without spinning, so that way it could actually function as a car. Luckily, the other arm with the weapon still swivels just fine. But yeah, because I couldn't change the actual torso too much, because Ryu still needed to fit. Unfortunately, the only way I could figure out to attach that hand and not have it swivel was to have it static in this mode, which is a little unfortunate, but not the end of the world. However, one thing I did make sure to do is not change any of the original connection points from the original set, so I can actually mix and match custom and official modules of the mech, which was the goal going in, and I'm really glad I was able to maintain that. But I think that's everything for my custom Zane's Ultra Combiner mech. Definitely a very interesting building challenge. I realized we had very big goals with this one. It may not have been the best choice for a time competition, but overall I had fun with it, and I do think it turned out pretty cool, even if there is a lot of room for improvement. But of course, that was just my builds for Lloyd and Cole, so now let's move over to Matthew so he can show you what he built for Aaron and for Kai. But real quickly, before we get to Matthew's build, did you know? The Woo Crew podcast is back! Longtime fans of the channel may remember when Matthew and I used to host a weekly podcast together talking about all things LEGO, and it's back on a brand new channel. The first 2 episodes are out now, and they'll be continuing weekly. We'll be talking about the latest LEGO news, the latest Ninjago news, and everything else. So if you want to hear more from me, more from him, and just all about LEGO, check it out in the description below. And then of course, if you enjoy these building challenge videos and you'd like to see more, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you're new. The more support that we get on these videos, the more of these we can make. But now, with all that said, I'll let Matthew show you his mech.
Hey everyone, Matthew here for my portion of the video, and here is my build of the combo mech. So this was a really interesting one. I think this was my 4th building challenge with Sean, and I am honestly gonna say that this is probably my least favorite build that I've done. It's quite unstable. I'm quite proud of the top half of this, but the legs I feel like leave a lot to be desired. I'm not very proud of how they came out, and they don't really turn into a super stable vehicle. But I am excited to show you guys the top half of this vehicle, because that I am super proud of. I kind of like, you know, this part I think looks great. I feel like I did a really good job of integrating the official builds. I did keep Ryu and Zane together from the official set. However, the legs I really struggled with on this one. I went into this build with a clear idea for the arms, and I really had no idea what I wanted to do for the legs other than kind of build a like generic plane of some sort. That did not work out super well. The arms I feel like worked out perfectly, but with the kind of part constraints that we have in these building challenges, as you know, we like to only use parts from certain sets that we pick out to kind of make it more of a challenge and not just an alternate build using whatever parts we want to. It really complicates the structural integrity of this. I think Sean, for his, used generally the same build as the legs on the official one, and I feel like I probably would have benefited a lot from that. However, I was trying to make a plane and not a car, and I really don't think I did a great job of that. And they're not very stable, and they fall apart really easily. But let's get this guy transformed, and I'll kind of show you what he does. So to transform him, I'm going to start off by taking off Zane in the same way you would in the actual set. I'm just going to put him off to the side. And I will also be taking off Ryu. Again, I did not touch Zane or Ryu in this set. I thought it would be cool, well, actually me and Sean thought it would be cool to make these modules compatible with the official set in as much of a capacity as we could, and in doing so we wanted to like maintain the look of the actual vehicle. I unfortunately don't have the actual set on hand to show you my pieces like mixed and matched with them. I really wish I could switch off like my top half with the official bottom half. I think that would look really cool. But to transform this guy, what we're gonna do is take this off. So I wanted to, when I went into this build, make this into a turret kind of similar to the Star Wars like Clone Wars turret. And I actually feel like I did a really good job of that. So in order to do that, obviously I would need 4 arms. I made it so the arms can split open using some just like basic clips right in there. And the whole thing transforms. So I'm a big Transformers fan, and I kind of used a lot of Transformers as inspiration for how to get this to work the way I was envisioning it. So let's start by taking off everything we would need to take off. So the cannon comes off of the arm. And I actually like the way the cannon stores on the vehicle when it's in mech mode. I think it adds a nice silhouette to this guy. But we take that off, and then we also remove this little like shoulder armor piece there. Then these fold down like a full 180 degrees. And then they come forward. So they kind of make the front silhouette of the new vehicle. And then the legs just kind of fold out like that. and the hands fold up like that on either side. And then you've got kind of the frame of the turret. Then this can connect right where Zane would connect right there. And it fits just like that. And then this piece comes on where it connects to the legs and just becomes a little like front turret piece. Now, I am genuinely so proud of how this looks. This, I think, works so well. It doesn't even look like it can turn into a mech, in my opinion. It just works really well. I honestly might end up displaying just this from this build because I'm quite happy with this. Now, there are some places where I feel like I kind of compromise the aesthetic of this for functionality just because of the parts limits. I would have preferred if this got covered up a little bit in here. It only looks good in robot mode there. I also would have liked to get some of the style from the outside of the arms on the inside of the legs because, again, they only really look good in vehicle mode, or mech mode. This, I guess, would be kind of vehicle mode. But I think this has a really nice silhouette and kind of complements the build nicely. Also, we don't get stuff like this from Ninjago too often. I understand why. It doesn't really fit Ninjago, but I think it looks cool, and I think it feels cool, and I like that it can really turn into something different from the mech. Now, let's move on to this part. Oops. That came off the hand. These fall apart really easily. That is my biggest complaint with what I did here. Now this is, this I don't think really came out very well. Now, I built the mech, the mech upper half turret first, and I feel like I used most of my useful pieces when I was building on that thing, and it kind of left me with not a lot to work with for the legs. I did not have a lot of inspiration for the legs, and I really kind of feel like that shows through here. But all you really need to do is plug them together right there in the middle and fold these up, and then you've got this real wonky looking little jet. Now, it could be worse, but it really does just kind of look like legs that I turned on their side, but they can't all be winners. You can also barely fit a minifigure in here. You can stand someone in between where the legs like click together. Though I'm not super proud of this one, honestly. Now, some just like design elements. I was originally planning on making this a dual cockpit vehicle for Wildfire and for Kai, and they were both going to sit right here, but that just kind of didn't happen. I didn't feel like I had the parts to make that work, and where these worked really well as cockpits in my building challenge with Sean from last year, where I built like a spaceship and a mech, I don't think they look very good on this. I didn't have anything to like kind of, I didn't have anything to stabilize right here, so I just don't think it worked out super well. I wanted a control panel in here. I wanted this to look a lot cooler than I feel like it ended up looking. I think at best this kind of looks like it would fit into like Star Wars Coruscant, like land speeder cars. I think the wings look a little bit cooler when they're folded up like that. Oh, I don't know where that went. Something flew off earlier, must have been that. But that's about it for this build. Let's move on to kind of putting this all back together. And here we are back again, put together. I'm very worried about this thing standing up, so I'm gonna try as much as I can to not touch it, because it falls apart really easily, especially when it's just kind of like standing here. The legs are not very stable, but here it is again. I, again, don't think this is my best work on these building challenges, but this was probably our hardest constraint to work within, and I think for that, I did a pretty good job. But let me know what you guys think of this, and we will get back to the rest of the video now.
And there we go, there are the custom mechs that Matthew and I both built. What did you think of them? I think they turned out pretty cool, all things considered. My favorite individual vehicle is definitely Matthew's turret, just because of how different it was from that original set. Mine, though, I think looks really awesome, especially in mech form. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like on it, subscribe to my channel if you're new, and let me know in the comments what kind of building challenges or custom build videos do you want to see in the future. But as for this one, I think that's about all I have to say, so thanks for watching everybody, I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!